Welcome to another episode of Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward, and that just so happens to be part of my government name, Ramses. What up, though?
Big week, as usual. But we got a few things to talk about that aren't just specific to this week. We got some things to talk about that have been conversations, if you will, baseless, in my opinion, but conversations in the black community for ever, really, since I've been born, clicked on. One of them is, well, what is the government doing for me? And I want to talk about.
That's a loaded question.
Right, because there's a good reason to ask those questions, but there's a glass half full and a glass half empty way of looking at politics from this vantage point, from a black vantage point. And so yes, obviously there's some folks that'll look at it and think, the government does nothing for us, we're forgotten, this, that, and the third. And then there's some people who look at the progress, no matter how small, and think, okay, well, we're moving in the right direction. This is just kind of the hand we've been dealt. It's not perfect, but the world will be a little bit better when I leave it than it was when I entered it. And that is energizing to some degree. The thing is, I tend to be of the latter mindset more often than not. I tend to look at, okay, what has been accomplished in my lifetime? What was the world I was born into? What is the world I'm in now? What will the world look like when I leave it? And, there's some things where I look around and I say, okay, well, I've seen a black president. I voted for him twice,
2 times.
Right. I've seen the first female vice president of the United States is black. I've seen, obviously during the dark Trump years, we saw that there's still a lot out there that needs to be dealt with. But, overall, I feel very optimistic about the trajectory of this country.
Bless your heart.
Well, that's kind of what I'm making a case for it. I do feel optimistic. I think that for the most part, there's enough of, you got to bear in mind that Hillary Clinton in 2016 did win the popular vote. So there are more people that will stand opposed to racism and misogyny and all these terrible things that have held black people and brown people back. There's more people that will stand against that than there are that will stand for it, as illustrated by the past 2 elections.
Trouble is, I think that's been the case for a long time.
Of course.
But our country has done nothing to correct the system that lets the minority win.
Right. And actively, or it continues to allow, we'll call it what it is, the right to disenfranchise voters based on nonsense, right? Gerrymandering, etc. There's lots more people that should be voting in these elections, and every vote should count. And the way it works now, I think I saw the Netflix documentary that a white man voter from Wyoming is worth like 1.75 votes, in terms of its actual impact in the political sphere arena than a person in California, so it's these white males still, based on the weight of their vote, still control disproportionately a disproportionate amount of policies and elections and so forth. So,
shout out to the Electoral College.
No, let's never shout that out. But there's some people who take a different approach. There's some people who try to see the world as perfect. As it is, they try to ignore the past or otherwise they try to condemn the plight of black people, or otherwise they're extremely critical of black people and our quest to live in a more equal world, a fairer go at life. And some of these people are names that you well know. Candace Owens is one of them, and Marcellus Wiley is another one. And before we talk about what I want to talk about, which is what has Joe Biden done so far with his executive orders that have affected black people, because that's a conversation that I've been hearing a lot, Oh, all y'all went out and voted for this man and he still hasn't done nothing for you, because I want to talk about that, And I want to talk about what executive orders actually are, so that, people can be educated and we can maintain a little bit of optimism, because it seems like a lot of folks are feeling real pessimistic right now, which I understand.
It doesn't help that they came into it looking to feel pessimistic.
Right.
Like
nothing is good enough,
yeah.
sort of people, But, we got to talk to them. We're all in this together, so we got to deal with these people who are scared of everything and think everybody's out to get them specifically and that sort of thing. So, you had some real strong opinions about some of these folks. So I want you to talk about those before we get to Joe Biden.
Well, I really only want to talk about one of them.
All right.
And then we just have some examples of people that are from that same school of thought.
Okay.
I've been I guess fan is the right word, of this show called Real Time on HBO. The host is a comedian and political pundit named Bill Maher. Someone that our former president loathed, which made him a friend of mine off bat. Like, oh, dude, don't rock with you heavy. Oh, you my man. Like, but even prior to that, I've been, watching and following this show for a long time. He tends to have a pretty pragmatic approach to politics. Rich white guy that kind of always stands up for the little guy, right? He doesn't vote his best interest. He's a rich white celebrity. The type of person that Donald Trump went to bat for. He just, like I figured all of our friends and colleagues and allies would be, smart enough to see that the dude wasn't a good person, no matter what he did for you in your bank account, or no matter what political plays he ran.
Sure.
He was just an awful person, and it was pretty see-through. There was no veil. He didn't even pretend. Okay, never mind, because I don't want to take the 20 steps back that I'm about to. But he had a guest on Friday, and I typically, if I'm working, and for you and I, every weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that was the truth. I would always either watch it on DVR in the middle of the night after work, or I would tune into the podcast when I was driving. It's essentially just the audio from the show presented as a podcast. Okay. And I'm driving home listening to the podcast, and I hear this voice talking about white privilege and systemic racism both being myths perpetuated by left-wing extremists. Forgive me for laughing, people, but it's 2021. And if you were an observer and all you ever saw of America was 2020, it'd be very, very difficult, even with that little bit of data, to say that systemic racism and white privilege didn't exist. Now, the funny thing is I'm listening to a podcast, so I can't see who's talking. But the first thing that bothered me is that Bill, the person who typically is on the right side of things, is agreeing with the voice that I hear. And I'm confused at this point, to a point where my stomach started to get uneasy. I was actually upset. So there's a third person on the panel a white guy who couldn't help himself but to interject, like almost like, wait, what are you guys talking about? Like, so we're all sitting here saying that white privilege isn't a thing, systemic racism isn't a thing. Like we're on HBO.
Sure, you want to go down there?
That's where we are right now. And he didn't riot for it. He didn't turn to Huey P. Newton. But you could just tell, like, he's the bystander that's sitting there like, okay, I don't typically ride for Black Lives Matter, but like this is where we are right now on Bill Maher's show, on the guy who just spent the last 4 years stomping his feet to get this president out of office. You're okay. I guess that's where we are. I'll be quiet. And Bill made reference to something, the white guy. And I said, oh, so one of these guys must not be white, if he's pointing out that the white guy is the one that has something to say. And, lo and behold, I Google Camille Foster, handsome, articulate, educated black man. And it was like getting punched in the stomach. Because in this country, there will always be a camera and a microphone and an opportunity for a well-spoken, educated black person that will take that stance. There'll always be a job, an opportunity, a check, a camera, a microphone. They will help you get that off.
They need that for their confirmation
bias. Oh my goodness! Listen,
this one person said it, so it's got to be
clearly
true. He agrees with me, and he's black.
And he's sadly not a singular case. And there's a psychological question that I have to pose to you, Ramses.
Okay.
What happens where, especially in the cases of some of these people that I'm listing, all of these people that I'm listing.
What are their names?
Candace Owens, Marcellus Wiley,
okay,
Jason Whitlock, and the aforementioned Camille Foster. They come from where we come from.
Right.
They reach some level of success. Maybe because we know this in this capitalist society, they make a lot of money, and maybe their daily isn't what it used to be. But how do they forget that it used to be that, and or displace themselves from their brothers and sisters who still experience that stuff in a very, very real way on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I think that, at least for me, it's a matter of what is in your heart. Some people, like, these people. There's some people that they get money no matter what, at any cost, right? These type of people. They don't care who they hurt, who they got to stomp on, what the price is, if someone might come and kill them, if they got to rob, whatever it is. There's sometimes they're business people, sometimes whatever. They will undercut, they will do the most savage things, right? Sharks in bloody water. That personality type is something that can be found in people of all colors and people at all different walks of life and all different stations in life. And I think that most of the time black people that adopt those, what I would consider anti-black sentiments, and then share them with white folks, especially those white folks that really need to hear that so that they can feel better about their own racist practices, instead of confronting them and really dealing with them. I think that those black people have that sort of personality type. Well, they'll sell their own children, they'll sell their people out, and again, if you're articulate enough, you can make anything sound good. You and I had an experience once upon a time. This was, we were at a school. I don't know if you remember the story, but there was a woman that worked at the school. And I think at the time we were talking about, it might have been a police shooting, because this was before there was any Donald Trump or anything like that. So it might have been a police shooting of a black person. And so that conversation was in the air. And, you and I were talking about something, and the girl chimed into our conversation. Suffice it to say that she, like most people, was intellectually inferior, right? But she needed to get something off in that conversation, and she tried it, and it didn't float. Not down this river, because I'm not the one, nor am I the
two.
Exactly.
3, 4, 5.
None of them. Don't try me. But then the next day she came back with a meme. And the meme was of Morgan Freeman. I believe it to be a quote taken out of context, but he said something to the effect of, what should black people do about racism or something? And he said that black people should stop talking about racism and it'll go away or something like that. Now, I don't know if that was taken out of context, but it was a very small clip or whatever. And she showed this to me to suggest that I was somehow wrong. My lived experience was somehow wrong. And the lived experience of, millions of people who have endured these both visible and invisible racist policies, frameworks, etc. Because she had one person that said something that kind of, supported what she was saying. She thought everything was, if I was going to see that and it was going to be all good, right? So I get that there are some people that need that. And if there's, they're just like actors, right? You can get an actor that'll play the most dehumanizing, degrading role if you pay them enough money to do it, right? I know you've seen this role before where you're like, why is that person playing that role? Like, it doesn't matter. Why would this woman play a dead body? You know what I mean? Like, a naked dead body on Bad Boys 2. Why would anybody do that? There's just no dignity in that. But obviously there's always somebody that'll take that. Money is a very powerful motivator, especially in this country, because we idolize money and things so much. And so, in my opinion, I think that, you get the right person with the right personality type that lacks the same, whatever, conviction and mental discipline and spiritual fortitude. Wave enough money in front of them and make sure they're articulate enough, and they can tell you exactly what you want to hear. Or there's some people that don't even do that. They'll say exactly what you write. And so, yeah, I get that there's people like that. Will I ever agree with them? I think that I forget his name, but I just said it. I think his name is
Camille Foster, or
Camille Foster. He's the one that said that he doesn't self-identify as black.
Yes. Have you seen him? Did I send you his picture?
Yeah. No, I know who he is.
He Wakanda black, bro.
Yeah, no, Wakanda forever black. He's Banta black. No, I know exactly.
Like he was in the Jabari tribe. I saw him.
Yeah. He was doing
who. Like he was in there, bro.
Yeah, man. So, for someone to say that, just imagine the mind. Like, imagine how far out there you have to be. Imagine who he's saying that to. He's not saying that to somebody who's actually black. Who's every day I wake up, I see a black person. He was trying to say something to, like, race as a construct is not real in the world, and I get what he said, because there's a medical basis for that. Race is not a real thing. It's imaginary. It's something that causes more divisiveness in our species than it should.
In a vacuum, he'd be absolutely right.
Right.
In the United States of America, me, bro.
Yeah, that's not how it is. Exactly. There is definitely dividing lines. I recall the meme of Peter Griffin holding up the color chart, and if you're a certain shade of brown, you're good.
You're protesting
below a certain shade.
If you're below a certain shade, you're a rioter.
Yeah, exactly. It's just those sorts of weird things that these people try to get off. And Candace Owens is another one.
Poor baby.
I want to say she said something like racism is over because she's never been a slave.
Because she singularly her,
Right.
has never been a slave.
Right. And so you can imagine, like, I know that what we're doing is we're taking one part of what these people are saying and like making a big deal out of it. But
Only because it would take us 30
too long
hours
to go through everything.
to really discuss
I
in
understand.
depth, their
But you do recognize that these people exist for mostly conservative white folks to feel less bad about what they know is the truth. If they were comfortable with their truth, they wouldn't need these people. These people would not be employable. If they were they knew without a shadow of a doubt that their spirit was unperturbed. If they knew that, hey, I'm morally centered, I'm right with God, I don't do anything, whatever. They really knew that. They wouldn't need anyone else to tell them that. These people have jobs. These Candace Owens, these Camille Fosters, and so forth have jobs is because it helps people to distance themselves from the fact that prisons are disproportionately crowded by black people. And they know that black people aren't inherently bad any more than any other human being in the world is. Everyone knows that all human beings come from black people, right? So how is it that all the black people in Africa are cool and that black people in America are somehow, and why is it that, there's, what I mean? Like, there's certain things that you just cannot escape, no matter how much you try to manipulate the facts and the data and so forth. And these people are just additional examples that allow those types of folks to feel a little bit better about themselves and to further insulate themselves from the reality of other people. These are the types of people that build mansions and gated communities with walls, and they rarely interact with folks that don't look like them. And when they listen to the news, as long as there's someone black that sells the same thing that they're telling themselves or that Tucker Carlson is telling them, then they're like, okay, so there's a black person that agrees, so look, we're all on the same page here. Those guys got to get it together. They got to stop having babies out of wedlock. They got to, the dad's got to stay in the home with the kids and raise the kids. They got to stop committing crimes and going to jail. They got to
stop committing crimes and going to jail.
This is a real thing.
As if we're filling out permission slips to do that.
Listen, man, this is a real thing for these people. And so, again, the Candace Owens. I want to say that Marcellus Wiley, he said that white privilege doesn't exist as well.
And even, it's similar to what you said about Camille when, the with his basis for the idea of race not existing, like, it's a straw man argument, right? Like, what you're saying is based in some truth that just absolutely doesn't apply to the conversation that you're having. Marcellus tried to take the position of, look at me, I'm from Compton and I made it to where I am. I'm rich, I'm successful, I'm famous. And to suggest that there is white privilege is the same as suggesting that there's a black disadvantage. Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Yeah. But he's trying to say it on some like proud black power kind of tip. Mm-hmm. But it's just, like I said, another straw man argument that just based on the context of the conversation that you're having, that position doesn't stand. Like the nuance and the context that you're throwing away to make this really, really weak point on television, on Fox Network, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Now Fox Sports, but still.
Where else would that go?
It's just kind of ridiculous, man.
So listen,
and very disappointing.
To anyone listening, first off, thank you for tuning in to Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward, and that's my name.
Yes, indeed. And if you haven't done so yet, please follow our social media at Civic Cipher on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But if you were to go to our Instagram right now, again, at Civic Cipher, and I think it's on our Facebook too, there's a video that I put up. It's a short video, maybe 2-3 minutes, really brief. But for anybody that wrestles with this idea of systemic racism, there's a brief video up there that really shows exactly what that's all about. Because I think that for the casual listener of our show or listener of, news, media, or whatever, they might hear a term like that, but not know exactly what it means. Like, so there's an actual system of racism? That sounds crazy, right? So I think that if you take a few minutes and look into that, it would help explain why Q and I are both so up in arms about these other black people claiming that it doesn't exist. And I think that, to be fair, we should probably do a show on that. So if you're listening again, stay tuned, because I think that we're going to put that show together. We're going to
dig a little deeper.
Yeah, and just so that we can put that together and make sure that we're educating at the same time as we're, kind of discussing these things.
And that's fair and necessary. I don't want us to just be on air just disagreeing,
right,
without providing any context and education, and to kind of help people understand a point of view that we've adopted because it's fact, not just because we like it,
right,
not just because it serves our purpose or the purposes of this show.
So, and I do want you to know that if I needed to have that conversation in an elevator or in passing, I absolutely could. But there is a degree of journalistic integrity that I think that we have in this show that I want to maintain. And so, given the right amount of time to prepare that and put it together, when I talk about redlining, I don't want to just say redlining. I want to kind of help go through what that means, when it happened, how it affected folks and so forth. And I know in my mind, but I want dates, things like that. So stay tuned for that. But for now, suffice it to say that we take it as fact that systemic racism exists and that there is such a thing as white privilege. I think even on this show, just to kind of meet folks where they might be, I've said in the past that white privilege is getting to start at zero. There's people who start at -2, -3, -4.
There's people that start at plus 100.
Maybe, if you're rich.
They're on the other side of that.
Yeah. But, just being born and being a white, we'll call it a white male, healthy Christian, straight male, we'll call that zero. You weren't born with any strikes against you. And so from someone born we'll call it a -4, a lesbian black woman with something else, a few strikes against her, she's gonna have a tougher go at life. It's just facts, right? From her perspective, that looks like privilege, but from a lot of white folks' perspective, they're like, I was born with nothing. I started at zero, same as everyone else. And so they're not able to really identify that privilege. Not
quite.
But
correct.
Again, I want to make sure that I script the show the right way to where it's not just a couple of seconds of me kind of painting that brief picture. I really want to go into detail. Now, with that in mind, I do want to talk about Joe Biden. He's in office. His pen is working. So he's moving, and every time I see the news and the news talks about the president, Joe Biden, it's a very different emotional response when I see, the president issues executive order than from the previous president.
Executive order is no longer a trigger.
Right. It's not like, because you remember during those Trump years, you would pick up your phone in the morning, it'd be something happened at 3 a.m. and you're like, oh man, so Muslim people can't come to the country no more? What does that mean for my Muslim friends? How do they feel? Let me call and check on them.
And the ones that are here need to register for some type of...
Sure, man, all kind of nonsense, or whatever it was. And now the executive orders seem to be a little bit more, okay, we're gonna make sure that we foster a culture of togetherness and fellowship and brotherhood and sisterhood and love in this country.
Bless his heart. Because he's riding with that. He's not, and I know it's not been a long time yet, but just the fact that he's not wavering on his approach of unity. And I say this every time I get a chance to. Thank you for Ramses for helping me to get some type of grace. Right? You cannot defeat hate with hate. No matter how hard you try, it'll never be successful. Now, love does not always beat hate. Not always. But it has a higher winning percentage than hate.
Sure.
By far.
Okay.
So shout out to our president for maintaining his position on trying to work with and unite with people who have said out loud that they would rather our demise. he wants to unite the country. That's his platform. Kudos to him.
And you know, that's, to be fair, that's a tough thing to try to do. There's so many different people, and millions of course, but so many different types of people, even if we're just like breaking them down. And those different types of people have, you know, different values and different beliefs and different backgrounds. And, you know, it's so interesting that we have a two-party system in this country, and we have, you know, literally there's like millions of people, you know, and you either got to fall into this political persuasion or that one. And this political persuasion encompasses all of these things and that one encompasses all of these things. And so you might have a little from here and a lot from there. So you're abandoning the things that you care about that this other party, you know, but you got to, you know, make that choice.
Indeed.
But, to his credit, you know, he's at least speaking to it. And that matters, I think, a lot more than what we're used to now, because the previous president was such a bully, and he was such a, well, I'm going to do it my way. He fired everybody he worked with, or they quit, you know. He just
anybody that disagreed with him.
Right, exactly. And so, but what I want to do is I want to talk about, there's this other type of black person, right? This person is on Facebook. This person is on, you know, Instagram or whatever. It's the one-off sort of guy or girl. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm never taking that vaccine.
Oh, that's not a one-off.
But, you know, like most people will say this thing, and then there's a person, you know, of course it's not a one-off, but we'll call it a handful that'll say this other thing, right? Perhaps because it's popular, perhaps it's because they're given to, you know, fear, things like this. But I'm not talking about vaccines per se. We've done that show, and we probably gonna have to do another one on it. But what I'm talking about is the person that is aware that we have a two-party system, at least in the past administration, was aware that we had pretty much a vote for Donald Trump or a vote for Joe Biden. That was it. Those were the only two realistic outcomes that we were going to have from that election. It's never been any different, you know, and these are intelligent thinking, they would call themselves free thinking.
And it would be very, very difficult to ever change that system.
Right.
Like, that's what we got.
Yeah, that's just what it is, right? And there are these people who say, well, I'm not voting for Joe Biden because, you know, once upon a time in 1972, he did this one thing. Or, you know, Joe Biden is not going to do anything for black people any better than Trump has. So why would I even bother, you know? Or whatever it is that they need to get off, right? So this, not one off, but this type of person that exists, you know, in these groups and, you know, various spaces on the internet, you know, they are just like these sort of like downers. You know, they never have it. Nothing is good enough for them. The whole world is terrible. The world sucks. Even good news is terrible. You know what I mean? Oh, we won the election. Well, wait until he sees what, you know, he's never going to do anything for us.
Ironically, same person that you brought up before. Two different issues, but it's the same guy. The same guy who's never taken the vaccine is the same guy that's like, oh, go ahead.
Okay, that's why
don't celebrate. Wait till tomorrow, because in that one day he's gonna.
Listen, man. The thing is, Kamala Harris got a bunch of whatever from Fox and right-wing media because she wasn't this and she wasn't that. When we see black people do it, oh, she was the top cop in you know, like we still gonna need police.
Listen,
you know what I mean? Like,
they bring up her record as the DA, and as I think she was Attorney General.
Sure.
Her job was to enforce the law. They bring up that she did a good job of enforcing the law as a strike against her.
And to be fair, because I want to be fair here, I understand that the laws are not always like, when punishments are handed out, or when, police enforce the laws, the laws are enforced differently from the police on the streets, and the sentencing is done differently from the judges in the courtrooms. But my understanding is she's never actually been a beat cop, and she's never actually been a judge.
Correct.
So when a criminal comes her way, she treats the criminal like a criminal. Again, I'm not excusing anything, but and we
it's
recognize
it's not an excuse. It's the necessary context and nuance that needs to be interjected into these conversations.
Sure. Okay. So so she will take a criminal of any color. The criminal is a criminal. We all can agree that. And then do whatever she does accordingly. Now, if she has a disproportionate amount that looks like this, I don't believe it's because she's looking for those people. That's a function of policing.
Yeah, that's why.
And the way policing is done, and certain neighborhoods are overly policed, particularly black and brown neighborhoods. And then in terms of convictions, obviously that's the way that sentencing is in the whole criminal justice system. And so she was a part of the machine. But the point I'm making is that for all these people to have such a strong opinion about her, and she's not black enough, and it's just one of these things where it's never good enough. These are the same people that had problems with Obama. These are the same people that are going to have a problem with whatever else good happens. Anytime a bunch of black people are celebrating something, they are going to be like, well, that's what black people, y'all all like ribs. That's why y'all got high blood pressure. That's that guy. You know what I mean? Nothing's good enough, right? And God bless them.
Sadly, that group is growing, though. It's discouraging, man.
Yeah. But, and God bless them. I recognize that, it would be hard for me to wake up every day and the world just be that terrible. I have joy in my life. I'm happy. I have opportunity. There's growth. I could see progress. Like we started the show talking about, like, in my lifetime, what I've seen. Yeah. And no matter what, these people aren't perfect people. I don't think I'll ever see a perfect person in my life. You know what I'm saying? When I get to heaven, maybe. But,
and that's also not the expectation.
Right.
You're not expecting
just
perfection.
Do the best you can. That's it. I'm not perfect, but somehow, these people get picked on because these certain black people that nothing is ever good enough, they pick on them. So it's to this group of people that I want to talk, because we've all heard or seen these folks. And one of the biggest things that comes up, at least in my timeline, one of the things I've seen is, well, Joe Biden ain't gonna do nothing for black people. What has Joe Biden done for black people, in his executive orders? So what I want to do is I want to talk about, A, what is an executive order? And B, I want to kind of go through some of the executive orders that he signed. And really take this and break it down in such a way to where we can understand that what we're seeing is good. And the fact that we haven't seen more is not necessarily bad. Sometimes you have to be strategic. Sometimes things, there's a long game. 400 years of racism doesn't go away, and the implications and the effects of it, and the way the country was built and so forth, that doesn't go away easily. Especially when a lot of the people who and still reap the benefits of that enslavement, whether they can see it or not, the benefits are still there. Their children will reap those benefits, whether they see it or not. To dismantle that in its entirety takes more than just a few days in office and some executive orders. And so, again, I want to talk about what an executive order is. So, an executive order is not a law. It is a directive from the president to people who carry out jobs in the government. And so there's a lot of power in that, in an executive order, but it's not like Congress and the Senate met and approved a bill.
It's not a constitutional amendment.
Right. It's not one of those things. And the truth is, what a lot of black people want reparations. A lot of black people want federal mandates, and guidelines and things like that for policing. A lot of black people want, an end to mass incarceration and into the war on drugs, and a lot of things like that. Those type of movements take
legislation,
right?
Time.
You need Congress. You need
bipartisan support.
Exactly. And for all the black people that are so critical of the system that has failed them, and rightfully so, you have a right to be critical. It's the only system there is. It's not that you can either withdraw from it and just take it on the chin for the rest of your life, or you can engage and get some other people who are like you to engage and elect, senators and campaign for people and get people to that share your vision in office, or run yourself.
You can even, as wide-minded as it and dream-minded as it may sound, can sign up and run for office yourself.
Say it. Let them know.
And, it may seem like a daunting task and beyond your capabilities, but it's not. Every single person that you see running and getting elected for office every year, they're not superheroes.
Regular folks.
They are regular people like you that wanted to be a part of the system that governed them instead of just a non-active participant.
Let me add this. You might have to, if you're one of those people, you might have to understand that your platform is going to require that you have a little bit of faith in your fellow man. You can't be scared of vaccines and all that paranoia stuff. Well, I guess you can do that and still run for office.
Yeah, you can
like
be, absolutely.
But in order to really get to the levels in government that are really necessary to help, get these policies and these things that you might want to see across the finish line, you have to recognize that there's going to need to be some compromise in terms of your beliefs. I might think they're bizarre. You might think they're entirely founded. Vaccines give people autism, and, the government is bugging everyone, and whatever it is, You
remember polio? Have you ever heard of polio?
I've heard of it because I got a polio shot in the 80s.
You remember measles?
I don't remember having it, but I got a measles shot.
You remember chicken pox?
I got chicken pox. I'm really from the 80s.
But your babies didn't.
Because they came out with a vaccine for it.
Because they came out with a vaccine. That's what I'm saying. Like I know it's in vogue to pretend science isn't real now, but there's a reason people don't die of polio anymore. Measles, chicken pox, these things used to kill people. You would die if you got sick.
Yeah.
They developed vaccines for them. Not only do we not die from them anymore, we don't even get them anymore because
they're gone.
Okay, I'm just, Google is free.
But see, that's the simplest argument. But these type of people, they don't want the simplest argument.
And I owe everybody an apology that can hear me right now, because that was the worst stance to take. I don't like to make people feel unintelligent by the stances that they take. So that was the wrong way to frame that and present it. But I get frustrated when there seems to be this contingent of contrarians now that want to debunk every myth. The conspiracy theorists used to have their own space over here somewhere, and now they're out front, and there's so much misinformation, so much disinformation, and so little fact checking and actual academic research that we can write something that's completely unfounded, baseless, and untrue, publish it, put it out, and if we articulate it well enough, it sounds legit. One person will see it, they'll feel away from reading it, not researching to make sure it made them feel away. So now that's what they think now, and that's what they're gonna tell all their friends passionately. I don't even mean to make a left because I know you was going straight.
No. I like that.
But
I thought,
man,
we need to talk about it. So yeah, if we want to get into politics, so one example I want to share is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell wanted to make sure that when he lost the majority seat in the Senate, there are now more Democrats in the Senate than there are Republicans. Democrats, if you don't know, tend to be voted into office, and black people's votes largely tend to go to Democratic candidates. So the expectation is that there's going to be more progressive policies enacted for black folks because now there's a Democratic majority in the Senate and in Congress. And since the president is a Democrat as well, now we have all three branches of government with the Supreme Court is heavily Republican now, but
Very.
but in terms of getting something into law, the Supreme Court can only say if the law is unconstitutional. So provided if the government with all the Senate, the House, and then
The president.
they can get something enacted. Let's say forgive student loan debt or whatever. It's not like that's an illegal thing, so the Supreme Court has no say in that sort of a thing. Anyway, Mitch McConnell has maneuvered in such a way over the past 4 years to where, despite there being more Democrats in the House of Representatives, in Congress specifically, that he hasn't even allowed for there to be a vote on these Democratic. He controls it, so he just won't even let people vote on it, even though it might not pass, might not get enough votes because he had the Senate majority. Wouldn't even let it go to the floor, right? Before relinquishing control of the Senate, because somehow that's a thing, they had to confirm the new people that were voted into office. Some came from Arizona, which is where we're from. So again, really proud of Arizona for that. Before even confirming them, so that the actual majority could start,
Governing?
Yeah, exactly. He held it hostage for a week, 2 weeks, however long it was, just so that he could keep the filibuster. Filibuster is basically you get out there and you prevent people from voting. It's basically what it is. It's a maneuver that keeps some people from voting.
It's the reason that President Obama wasn't the black version of Donald Trump, right? A lot of black people's problems with Barack is that they felt he was too much of a centrist. He tried to appeal to both sides of the aisle too much, and he did not have a flagrantly black agenda. They wanted the black version of Donald Trump. They wanted someone to just go into office, push for everything that we've been denied for all of this time, and do it now. He was supposed to go in there, not care about the rule of law, proper legislation, actually running things like they're supposed to go. But like this last president, he didn't care. So that's how I think I watched a lot of, black people. People wonder how Trump got more black votes the second time. Being so disenfranchised and oppressed for so long, when Obama won, there is a section of our culture that really wanted him to be like Black Superman.
Yeah.
Like if Malcolm X were president, how would he have done it? A strictly for us black agenda. And there was a lot of things that he wanted to do, but just like when Trump was in office, they had the majority. Same when Obama was in office. And there were a lot of things that were filibustered for kicks.
Just because they didn't want. Obama could have been a lot more effective president.
Yes.
Everybody could be a lot more effective president if they had the support. The reason why Trump got everything done is because he had a Republican Senate. And then for the first couple of years, he had a Republican Congress as well.
And he also didn't care.
That part.
Wow.
So, for everybody that always has something negative to say, if you put that energy into getting a 2/3 majority in Senate, because some things can pass with a simple majority, which is what the Democrats have now. Other things, more progressive things, will take a 2/3 majority. And that means that you have to convince, 13 Republicans. And again, we all tend to vote along party lines. You have to convince 13 Republicans to break with their party and vote something into law.
Not just their party, but their constituents.
Sure, that part. And so for everyone in these little pockets of their own mind thinking that the world is never going to be good enough, and anything that is celebrated is they just rain on every parade, if they took that energy and put it into like actually getting some more Democratic candidates in office, or if you really believe that black people need this, and whatever it is that you believe, if you run for office and engage in the political system as opposed to like withdraw from it, then at least you have a leg to stand on with me, because again, we only have the system for you to say, look, man, well, what has Joe Biden done for y'all? See, y'all voted him into office and he forgot all about y'all. He signing executive orders about COVID. Yeah, I think COVID comes before a lot of stuff. People are dying from that, and disproportionately black people are dying from that. So, if you're looking for it, it's there, and if you're looking for what it is that you think is, you being further disenfranchised, that's there as well. You're going to find what you're looking for. Some of the other things that I want to talk about is, actually, I'll read down this list. So some of the executive orders that Joe Biden's enacted, the mask wearing was a big one. He wanted to make sure that the vaccines were rolled out. I'm going through these kind of quick just because it's a lot of words here. What else? He's paused federal student loan payments. Hopefully, if we can get that all the way together, he can relieve student loan debt. I got a master's degree, so I got a little debt. I would love for that to disappear myself. Some stuff about Medicaid, protecting women's health, so forth. Of course, re-entered the Paris Climate Agreement. We all live on the planet together. An executive order to get that back on track makes sense. Without a planet, there's no black people either. Okay, y'all. So let the man do his job. What else? There's an executive order on the revision of civil immigration enforcement policies and priorities. That one's for our brown brothers and sisters, our Mexican brothers and sisters specifically. There was a lot of nonsense taking place at the border for a long time with ICE and with, kids in cages and all the things that about. We've talked about it on the show. We've, seen it on the news. You know what I'm saying? That was something that he was able to get that off real quick just by signing some paper and having it put together. It's a little easier for that to happen. We don't have to feel like we're not a priority because that was done. Black people, you know what I'm saying? Or these specific black people. Most black people are just happy that we got out of that last phase of our life. So most of us are just kind of chilling.
Yes, indeed.
With just, the world not being as tense as it once was. But for those outliers, we gotta, let the man do what he's doing. There's an executive order for trans folks being able to serve in the military, which, feel how you feel. I support that. I think that's dope. It's necessary. Everybody should have a right to feel, welcome and have some dignity and, have some security in their life.
Especially in a country where not only our military, but our police forces are voluntary. You have to volunteer to serve in that matter. It's not, we don't draft people.
Right.
To deny people that want to serve the country based on something that's completely none of your business is ridiculous.
And then that brings me to some of the things that Joe Biden has done that folks might actually like. These outlier folks. I need to come up with a name for this type of person. But one of them is an executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. which includes various directives to promote allocating federal resources and government benefits. The executive order on reforming our incarceration system to eliminate the use of privately operated criminal detention facilities. Private prisons, for-profit prisons, that has an effect on the way policing is done. That has an effect on how many people are incarcerated and what type of people are incarcerated.
Those places have quotas to meet.
There you go.
Real life. I'm not making this up.
We need at least 80% inmate capacity.
We need people in these beds.
Yeah.
So our contracts can be served so we can get paid.
That is the opposite approach that people should have when dealing with crime. We need to minimize crime. But a for-profit prison means we need to maximize occupancy in the prison, in the jails. So that means longer sentences, harsher policing in communities that don't need it, because not every black community needs the amount of policing that's there. But when you put more police in, north, south, east, west, right? If you put all the police officers on the west side,
they're going to find all the crime.
All the crime is going to be found on the west side. If you share the police equally on all sides of the city, then, it's going to be a little bit more evenly distributed. But, just a simple concept there, but hopefully it made sense. Another one is a memorandum on condemning and combating racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States, which I think is very important. So my brother Raka, for those of you that might know me, I have an older brother. His name is Raka. He's in a group called Dilated Peoples, hip hop group. Before we started this show, Raka sat with me and he's like, hey man, make sure that when you do this show that you speak to other people who have supported black people over the years, because they don't always get the same voice that black people get. Black people are visible and powerful in this country, right? So I wanted to make sure that I said that here, and I think that that's a win for black people too, because we've been supported by Asian people with the Panthers and all the way up to Black Lives Matter in this past summer. So that's important as well. And the executive order on ethics commitments by executive branch personnel. I think that those things altogether are some things that he can do in the matter of days that he's actually been in office. In addition to all the other things that he's done, but those are some things that at least have accommodated what black folks are at least going to want to see during this administration.
And as disenfranchised and oppressed as we've and lied to and manipulated and taken advantage of by our government as we felt has been true, do some research. Ramses will remind you every week that Google is free. Our federal and state governments employ black people at a much higher percentage than most of corporate America. Yeah. And that might surprise you. They're the only ones without forced incentive that go out of their way to employ us at a higher rate. So just another tidbit to add to what we were already talking about.
And that's going to do it for us. So once again, I'm Ramses Ja.
And my name is Quentin, but my friends call me Q Ward.
And this is Civic Cipher. Please hit the website, civiccipher.com. Submit your questions, show topics. Of course, we need your donations. Consider becoming a Patreon as well. And of course, follow all our social media at Civic Cipher. And you can also download previous shows. And until next week, y'all, peace.